Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well today. So I am so excited for today's video because today is the day that my newest sewing pattern, the Fleece Scrunchie, is launching both over on my Etsy shop and my website. So I will have that linked down below in case any of you guys would like to check it out. But I thought in honor of that, today I would make some different scrunchie styles here on my channel. I will be using the pattern to go through these different styles. So if you specifically want to make either the kind with the short little knotted bow or with this longer bow, it might be easier if you have the pattern, but for simple styles like these plain scrunchies, you don't really need a pattern for these. These are just made out of rectangles of fabric. So I hope whether you have the pattern or not, you'll find this video helpful and interesting. I'm really excited about it. I love making scrunchies. If you aren't familiar, I had an Etsy shop for a while where I sold scrunchies that I made. So I thought it would be fun to put all of my different styles into a sewing pattern. So I'm excited to have compiled all of that together for you guys. And just as a quick side note, if any of you guys are looking to open up a scrunchie shop or to sell the scrunchies, that is totally fine if you want to do that with the pattern that I have available. So if that's something you're interested in, that is totally fine. I'm really excited to show you guys all these different styles that I've made today. I've made 5 different ones, including this very fluffy Sherpa one that I have in my hair right now. I think they're all really fun, so let's go ahead and jump right in. So here's a quick look at what the pattern will look like if you do decide to download it. When you print it out, there will be 2 sections, the pattern guide and then the pattern pieces. So the first thing I'm going to do here is cut apart the pattern piece sheets and tape them together by matching up the black arrows in the center and making sure that everything is lined up in order. The pages are numbered, so you can just follow the numbers and tape them together and cut out the pattern pieces. So there are 3 pattern pieces to the scrunchie pattern: the band piece, which you will use for all scrunchie styles, as well as the long bow piece and the short bow piece. And then here is a quick look at the pattern guide. It is fully illustrated and has step-by-step instructions throughout. So now we're ready to start making some scrunchies, and the first one I'm going to be making today is made from this beautiful floral fabric that I had left over from a dress that I made last year, and I'm going to be making view 2 from the pattern, which is the long scarf style scrunchie. So I'm starting by cutting out my pattern pieces. First of all, the band piece, which I need for all of my scrunchies, and then I'm also going to cut out the long bow piece, and for this one I'm going to cut it out on the fold twice. So I'll line up the short edge here with the fold of the fabric and then cut out 2 different versions of this piece. And with all of my pattern pieces cut out, I can go ahead and get started putting this scrunchie together. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the scrunchie band piece and fold up one short edge of this piece 1/4 inch and press it down. This is going to allow us to conceal any raw edges once we put the scrunchie together. Next, to turn this into a tube of fabric, fold the scrunchie band in half with the right sides together and match it together along the long edges. Then pin this in place and stitch it down with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. As I'm sewing this together, I am going to make sure that I'm back stitching on either end of the scrunchie piece just to keep everything really secure when we turn it right side out. To turn the tube of fabric right side out, I like to use a safety pin. So I'm just going to take this safety pin and pin it to the top of the scrunchie where it's folded over at that top edge. Then I'm just going to thread the safety pin through the fabric. And you'll notice as you do this that it begins to turn in on itself, and you can kind of help it along the way. But this is a really simple way to turn a tube of fabric right side out. Next, I'm just going to give my fabric a quick press with the iron, and then we are ready to add the elastic. I've cut a piece of 1/4 inch elastic that is 9.5 inches long. This is the length that I found works best for scrunchies, and you can kind of adjust that based on your personal preference. But I'm once again going to use my trusty safety pin and thread this elastic through the scrunchie. And once my elastic is threaded through, I'm just going to make sure that the elastic is not twisted inside the scrunchie and match the two ends together, and then knot them securely together and trim off any excess elastic. So now it's time to join this scrunchie together into a loop, and to do that I'm going to tuck the raw edge into the edge that we folded over at the beginning. This will conceal any edges and keep this from fraying once we've sewn it together. So I'm just going to tuck that into place and then pin it in place and top stitch it down, making sure to backstitch. So with the main part of the scrunchie done, we can move on to adding the scarf piece. So I'm going to start by layering my two scarf pieces together with the right sides together and pinning around the edge. Then I'm going to sew these two pieces together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance all around the edge between the two circles marked on the pattern piece. You want to make sure that you leave a gap in the center so that we can turn this to the right side after we're done sewing it. I'm going to turn this piece right side out, and I like to use a knitting needle just to make sure that all of the corners are fully turned to the right side. You could use a pencil or something like that if you have that on hand. And I'm just going to turn this right side out and then press it flat. Now when I get to the center of the scrunchie where we left that gap, I'm just going to make sure that the edges are folded under towards the center and press this in place. You do have the option here, you could sew it closed if you wanted to, but I find once this is knotted onto the scrunchie that I've never had any issues with leaving it. So that's up to you. I'm just going to leave mine today. And now I can put the scrunchie together. So to do this, I like to take the scarf piece and make sure that it's lining up right over the seam that we sewed on the scrunchie. Then I'm just going to make sure it's centered and tie it in a knot and adjust it until I'm happy with how it looks. That's all there is to this scarf style scrunchie. I think this style is so pretty and unique, and I love it especially in this floral fabric. Next, I'm going to make view 1 from the pattern, which is this cute knotted style scrunchie. And for this one, I'm using this adorable floral printed fabric from Rifle Paper Company. I love the colors in this one. And this is a cotton fabric, which I think works really well for the knotted style scrunchie because it helps it to hold its shape a little better. So I've cut out the scrunchie band piece, just like I did for the first scrunchie. And then I'm also going to cut out the short bow piece. And once again, just like with the first scrunchie, you will want 2 of the bow piece so that we can sew the 2 together. So with all our pieces cut out, we are ready to get started sewing. And for the main part of the scrunchie, I'm going to follow the exact same steps as I did for the first one, folding over the edge 1/4 inch, sewing the fabric into a tube, then turning it right side out, adding the elastic and top stitching it together. It's the exact same process. And with the scrunchie assembled, I can move on to the little knotted bow. So I'm going to start by placing my 2 bow pieces with the right sides together and pinning these together. Then I'm going to sew around the edge, making sure to leave a gap between the 2 circles as is indicated on the pattern piece. Now, when you sew these 2 pieces together, you have the option to kind of pivot your needle at the end, which gives it a little bit more of a pointed look. And I do like to do that, or you can just follow the curve exactly. So now I'm just going to turn this to the right side, and I like to use my knitting needle once again just to make sure everything gets turned to the right side really easily. Now I'm just going to press this piece flat, and once again I'm going to tuck under those center edges just to make sure that they stay in place and no raw edges are showing. Now we're ready to add the bow to the scrunchie. So once again, I'm just going to overlap this over the seam on the scrunchie and make sure that that seam is hidden underneath the bow, and then I'll tie it in a knot and just adjust it until it looks like I want it to. So that is the knotted scrunchie. I think this one is so cute, and this is the one I definitely made the most of for my Etsy shop. So I've made a lot of them over the years. So I have a lot of practice with them, but I think they're really fun to make and such a cute accessory. I wanted to make a few scrunchies that didn't have any ties on them, and I've been seeing a lot of sheer scrunchies online recently, so I thought I would try my hand at that today. I found this beautiful embroidered tulle fabric at Joann Fabrics, which I think is so lovely. So I decided to use this for the scrunchies. So I cut out the scrunchie band piece from the embroidered tulle, and then I'm also cutting out a layer of plain cream colored tulle here, which is so hard to see on my white desk, but hopefully you can kind of see it there. And I'm going to layer these 2 pieces together and treat them as one piece. This is just going to keep the elastic from showing through so much and add a little bit more dimension to the scrunchie. So holding these 2 pieces together, I'm once again going to fold over that edge 1/4 inch and making sure that my iron is on a low setting so I don't melt my fabric. I'm going to press this down. So now I'm just following the exact same steps from before and matching the long edges together, but I am making sure that that extra layer of tulle doesn't get twisted or anything like that and stays contained in the seam allowance as I sew this together. Now, since I won't be covering up the seam on this one with any kind of tie, I'm going to sew the seam together by hand just so I can hide my stitching. So I'm using a needle and thread here, and I'm stitching back and forth between the layers of fabric, concealing my stitches as best I can. And I like to stitch all the way across one side of the scrunchie and then also along the other side, just so that everything is really strong and secure. And this helps to hide the seam a lot better than if I were to sew it on the sewing machine. Then I'm just going to knot my thread off and trim the thread, and this scrunchie is done. I love how this one turned out, and I think you can see here that the elastic doesn't show through too much. I think it's so pretty. Another scrunchie style that's caught my eye lately are the fluffy Sherpa style scrunchies. I think they're so fun and cozy looking for the winter time. So I found this Sherpa style fabric at Joann Fabrics, and that is what I'm going to make the next scrunchie out of. So I'm starting by just cutting out my scrunchie band piece once again out of the fabric. This fabric is so soft and fluffy. I had to try and restrain myself from just petting it the entire time I was sewing with it. But the first thing I'm going to do here is fold over that edge 1/4 of an inch, but I'm not going to press it down just because this fabric is so hard to iron because it's so fluffy. So I'm just going to hold that with my fingers and then pin it in place. Then I'm just going to follow the exact same process, sewing this into a tube of fabric, turning it right side out, adding the elastic, and sewing it closed. I also opted to sew this one together by hand, and this was a really good candidate for that because it's very easy to hide the stitching in this super fluffy fabric. And I love how fluffy this scrunchie looks overall. Something about the thickness of the fabric actually makes it look bigger than any of the other styles, and I think it turned out so cute. And then the last style that I wanted to make today is made out of satin fabric, and I'm using some satin scraps that I had in my fabric stash. I love silk and satin scrunchies because I think they are just so gentle on my hair and really comfortable to wear. So I thought this champagne color would be really pretty to make a scrunchie out of. So on this particular scrunchie, I'm following all the exact same steps that I did on the last few, and I am going to sew this one together by hand at the end because it is more delicate and I want to make sure that none of my stitching shows. So here is how the satin one turned out. I think this one is so pretty, and it's made me think I would like to make a few more in more neutral satin colors. One of my favorite things about sewing scrunchies is that there is so much room for creativity when it comes to the different styles. So I hope you found this inspiring if you are wanting to make some yourself. And if you do decide to get the pattern, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Alright guys, that is going to be it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed seeing all of the different scrunchie styles. I think my favorite might be this one just because I love the floral fabric, but I also really like the Sherpa one. It's very comfortable too. It's like having a fluffy pillow in your hair. But I hope you guys will try some of these out. If you end up getting the pattern or just trying to make a scrunchie, please tag me over on Instagram or on TikTok. I will have my username up here on the screen if you would like to tag me. I would love to see your projects. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you are new here on my channel, I would love to have you subscribe by pushing the red button down below, and that will allow you to stay tuned for all of my future sewing videos. But thanks again so much for watching today and hanging out, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye!